On their final night in Seoul, they all gathered for dinner on Jinwoo's rooftop, the place that had seen every phase of their love. The sky was painted in violet and gold as the city lights flickered to life below. Eli played music from his phone, Mrs. Johnson shared stories from home, and Jinwoo listened with a soft smile, occasionally glancing at Felicity like she was the only thing that existed. When the night wound down and everyone went inside, Felicity lingered with him under the stars. "My family loves you," she said quietly. "I love them too," he replied. "They're pieces of you I never knew I needed to see." She smiled, tracing her finger along his collar. "You've changed so much, Jinwoo." He looked at her for a long moment. "No, you just made me real." He lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her wrist. "When they leave tomorrow, I'll miss the laughter. But mostly, I'll miss seeing the world through their eyes, because I got to see where your light comes from." She leaned into him, eyes soft. "And I'll keep reminding you that love doesn't take away strength. It builds it." He smiled faintly. "You've built me, Felicity. Every wall, every fear, gone." The wind carried the scent of flowers and city smoke as they kissed again, gentle and slow. The kind of kiss that didn't rush the moment. The kind that promised tomorrow could wait. The next morning, after her family's flight, Felicity and Jinwoo walked hand in hand through Uedo Park. Cherry blossoms had begun to bloom, drifting around them like pink snow. Jinwoo stopped beneath a tree, brushing a petal from her hair. "Do you remember when we couldn't even walk together in public?" he asked. She smiled. "Now the city doesn't even stare anymore." "Maybe they finally learned what I did," he said. "That love isn't something to understand. It's something to feel." Felicity touched his chest lightly. "You've become such a poet, Mr. Kong." He laughed softly. "Only with you." She rose on her toes, pressing a kiss to his lips, sweet, unhurried, filled with gratitude. In that moment, the city, the world, and all their struggles faded away. There was only them, two souls from different worlds, finally at peace in one rhythm. Their love had begun in whispers, survived in shadows, and now, under cherry blossom skies, it bloomed fearlessly for all to see. It had been 6 months since Felicity's family left Korea, and though her life with Jinwoo was full of warmth and laughter, she felt a quiet pull, a longing to return home, to walk the red earth of Ghana once more and let him see where she had come from. One evening, as they sat watching the Seoul skyline from their balcony, Felicity leaned into his shoulder. "I want to take you home," she whispered. Jinwoo turned to her, his eyes full of gentle curiosity. "Home? Yes," she said, smiling softly. "To Ghana. I want you to see my world, where my heart began." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded with a small smile. "Then let's go find your beginning, my love." The heat in Ghana was different, golden, alive. As the plane doors opened, Jinwoo inhaled deeply, blinking against the bright sunlight. The air was thick with the scent of dust, spice, and something he couldn't name. Home, he realized, though it wasn't his. Felicity's hand slipped into his. "Welcome to my world," she said, her voice full of pride. They stayed in her mother's family house, a wide, old building surrounded by coconut trees and laughter. The days were filled with greetings, questions, and endless food. Her cousins teased him about his accent. Her aunt made him eat too much bangku and pepper soup. But through it all, Jinwoo never once looked uncomfortable. At night, when the house went quiet, Felicity found him sitting outside, gazing up at the African stars. "They look different," he murmured. "How?" she asked, sitting beside him. "Closer," he said, "like they're listening." She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "They always have. You just had to come here to hear them." He turned to her then, eyes soft. "Felicity, being here with you feels like touching the sky with both hands." That weekend, the village held a celebration. Music, lights, and laughter under the full moon. Women in bright dresses danced in a circle, drums echoing in the air. Felicity, glowing in a golden ankara gown, moved with effortless grace, her hips swaying to the rhythm of home. Jinwoo couldn't take his eyes off her. The way her body spoke the language of her people, the fire in her smile. Her friends pulled him into the circle, laughing, urging him to dance. He hesitated, awkward at first. But when Felicity caught his hands and led him, he followed her every move. "Just feel it," she whispered against his ear. "Don't think." So he didn't. He let the music take him, her laughter, her scent, her heartbeat against his chest. And when the drums softened, and the world seemed to blur, Jinwoo leaned in and kissed her, slow, deep, under the glow of firelight. The crowd cheered playfully, but in that moment, it was only the two of them. Her dark skin gleaming against his, their lips speaking the same language, love. Days later, they escaped to a quiet beach near Cape Coast. The sea stretched endlessly, the wind carrying the smell of salt and wet sand. They walked barefoot along the shore, waves brushing against their ankles. Felicity stopped suddenly and turned to face him. "When I was younger," she said softly, "I used to come here and dream about love, the kind that would see me, really see me. I never thought it would come from halfway across the world." Jinwoo took her hands, his thumbs tracing gentle circles against her palms. "I never thought I'd find love outside everything I knew. But then I met you, and suddenly nothing else mattered." Raindrops began to fall, soft at first, then stronger. Felicity laughed, tilting her head to the sky. "We should run." But Jinwoo caught her hand, pulling her close. "No," he whispered, his forehead touching hers. "Let's stay." The rain poured down, soaking their clothes, but they didn't care. He kissed her, a kiss that tasted of rain and promise. His fingers tangled in her curls, her hands clutching his soaked shirt. It wasn't a hurried kiss. It was full of depth and warmth, the kind that burned slow and stayed forever. When they finally pulled apart, Felicity's eyes shimmered. "Why do you always look at me like that?" she asked breathlessly. "Because," Jinwoo whispered, "I'm still in awe that you're real." The next morning, they sat by the window of a small guest house overlooking the sea, wrapped in a single blanket, steam rising from 2 cups of cocoa. Felicity leaned her head on his shoulder, tracing lazy circles on his chest. "You know," she murmured, "my grandmother used to say that when two souls are meant to be, even oceans can't keep them apart." Jinwoo smiled faintly. "Then we must have crossed a few oceans to find each other." She looked up at him, her voice a whisper. "Would you do it again?" He cupped her face gently. "1,000 times. And I'd still choose you." She kissed him, slow and lingering, as the morning sun painted gold across their skin. Outside, the world continued as usual. But in that quiet room, they existed in a world of their own. A world built of devotion, courage, and a love that had defied everything. And for the first time, Felicity felt it deep within her, that her heart no longer belonged to two places. It belonged to him. It had been a year since Felicity and Jinwoo returned from Ghana. Life in Seoul had settled into a quiet rhythm. Shared breakfasts, stolen kisses before work, and laughter that filled every corner of their apartment. But one night, Jinwoo's eyes carried a secret. He told her to dress beautifully, simple but special, he said, and drove her out of the city. They arrived at a small hill overlooking the Han River, lit with hundreds of floating lanterns. Felicity gasped. "Jinwoo, what is this?" He smiled softly, taking her hands. "This is where I first realized I couldn't imagine life without you." As the lanterns drifted above them, Jinwoo knelt, slowly, reverently. "Felicity," he said, his voice trembling. "You came into my world and turned silence into music. You showed me that love isn't a weakness. It's the reason we breathe. I don't want a life that doesn't have you in it. Will you marry me?" Her breath caught. Tears welled in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times, yes. When he slipped the ring onto her finger, she pulled him into her arms, and they kissed under a sky of light, two souls who had finally found home in each other. Months later, the world witnessed something rare and beautiful. A wedding that blended Seoul's elegance and Africa's heart. The ceremony was held in a glass garden overlooking the river, filled with cherry blossoms and bright Ghanaian fabrics that danced in the wind. Felicity wore a gown that shimmered like morning sunlight, the top wrapped in silk embroidered with golden adinkra symbols of love and unity. Jinwoo, in a white hanbok with subtle gold trim, couldn't take his eyes off her as she walked down the aisle. Her mother was radiant in blue, his parents proud and tearful, cultures intertwined like threads of fate, drums and violins, prayers in 2 languages, and blessings from both worlds. When the officiant spoke the final words, "You may now seal your vows," Jinwoo leaned close, his voice trembling with awe. "You're my forever, Felicity. And you," she whispered, "are my peace." Their kiss drew gentle applause, soft at first, then bursting into joyful celebration. That night, they retreated to the small villa overlooking the sea, the same one they had stayed in years ago when he first confessed his love. Candles flickered across the room, soft music playing in the background. Felicity sat by the window, the moonlight dancing on her bare shoulders as she loosened her hair. Jinwoo came up behind her, his hands wrapping around her waist, his lips brushing her neck. "Mrs. Kong," he whispered, "you have no idea how long I've waited to call you that." She turned to face him, eyes glowing. "Then don't stop saying it." They kissed, slow, tender, every touch filled with gratitude and awe. No rush, no fear, just 2 hearts learning the rhythm of forever. He whispered against her skin, "You make me believe in every impossible thing." And she smiled softly, her fingers tracing his jaw. "Then believe in this. We were meant to find each other." That night wasn't about passion alone. It was about belonging, the merging of souls who had traveled worlds apart just to find home in each other's arms. Weeks later, the world knew them as Mr. and Mrs. Kong, the couple that had turned prejudice into poetry. Their mornings began with laughter over breakfast. Their evenings ended with shared dreams. Jinwoo still teased her about her accent, and Felicity still laughed at how serious he got when cooking jollof rice. But beneath it all was a quiet, unshakable love, the kind that didn't need to be seen to be real. One evening, as they sat on their balcony, Felicity leaned into him and whispered, "Do you remember what you said the night we first danced in Ghana?" He smiled, kissing her forehead. "That the stars felt closer?" She nodded. "They still do." He looked down at her, his hand resting on her belly, the faint curve of new life beginning to bloom. "They'll be even closer now," he said softly, "because soon we'll have a piece of the stars right here with us." Felicity smiled, tears glimmering in her eyes, and beneath the glowing soul skyline, the 2 of them held each other. Their love no longer forbidden, no longer uncertain, just real, just forever. The seasons turned again, and Seoul shimmered under soft spring rain. Felicity sat by the window, her hand resting on her gently rounded belly as the sound of raindrops filled the quiet apartment. Jinwoo knelt before her, drying her damp feet after she tried to water her plants barefoot in the rain. "You shouldn't be walking around like this," he murmured with a tender smile. She laughed softly, touching his cheek. "I'm pregnant, Jinwoo, not made of glass." He looked up at her, eyes warm and full of awe. "To me, you are. You're carrying my heart inside you." She smiled, brushing a tear from his jaw. "You've become such a poet since you fell in love with me." He leaned forward, kissing her palm. "You turned me into one." The rain kept falling, wrapping the moment in music, and when Felicity leaned down and kissed him, slow and deep time seemed to stop. Every night, Jinwoo would rest his head on her stomach and whisper to the unborn child. "Do you hear me, little one?" He'd say softly, "It's Appa. I hope you have your mother's laugh and her courage." Felicity would smile, brushing her fingers through his hair. "And maybe your patience," she teased. He looked up, pretending to pout. "I'm patient because you taught me how to wait for what's real." As the months passed, Jinwoo became her shadow, holding her hand during hospital visits, cooking her favorite foods, even painting the baby's room with warm cream and soft yellow tones. One afternoon, he came home early with a surprise. A delicate gold bracelet engraved with the word Eunoia, meaning beautiful thinking. For our daughter, he said. A name that reminds her to see beauty, even in chaos. Felicity's eyes filled with tears. Jinwoo. She's going to know what love looks like just by watching you. He took her face in his hands. No. She'll know it because she'll see you. It was midnight when the contractions began. Jinwoo, calm yet trembling, drove through the quiet streets of Seoul, one hand gripping the wheel, the other wrapped around Felicity's. Hours passed. Laughter, pain, tears, and whispers of courage. And then, as dawn broke, a baby's cry filled the hospital room. Their daughter arrived, tiny, perfect, with Jinwoo's eyes and Felicity's warm brown skin. He stood there in silence for a moment, unable to breathe as he watched Felicity cradle her. She's everything, he whispered, voice cracking. Felicity smiled weakly, sweat and tears blending on her face. She's us. When he finally held their child, his hands shook. Hello, little star, he whispered. You don't know it yet, but you already changed my world. Felicity watched him. This once cold, disciplined CEO, now melting with wonder as he kissed their baby's forehead. And in that quiet room, love didn't just exist between them anymore. It multiplied. Their home became filled with new sounds, soft coos, tiny cries, and the lullaby of two hearts learning parenthood. Jinwoo would wake in the middle of the night to rock the baby back to sleep, humming softly in Korean. Sometimes, Felicity would wake to find them both asleep on the couch, the baby resting on his chest, his arm protectively around her. One morning, as sunlight spilled across the room, Felicity stood by the crib and whispered, You know, she looks like you when she sleeps. Jinwoo came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Then she's the luckiest girl in the world, because she looks like the man who loves her mother more than life. She turned in his arms, eyes soft. You still make my heart race, Jinwoo. He smiled, brushing his lips against her temple. That's because I'm still falling for you. Every day. Their kiss was slow, quiet, the kind that spoke of peace after storms, and a future built on whispers, patience, and faith. Months later, they returned to Ghana with their baby girl. Felicity's family waited at the airport, tears streaming down their faces as they saw the new life she had brought home. Mrs. Johnson took her granddaughter into her arms. She looks like both of you, she said softly. Two worlds in one heart. That evening, under the same African sky where Jinwoo had once danced clumsily to the drums, the three of them sat by the firelight. A family bound not by tradition or expectation, but by something deeper. Jinwoo watched the flames and whispered, This is what love should feel like. Warm, endless, and real. Felicity leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. You gave me forever, Jinwoo. He kissed her forehead gently. No, my love. You gave me meaning. Their daughter stirred softly between them, and the fire crackled, as if blessing their union, their story, their love. In that moment, it was clear. Love had not just conquered differences. It had rewritten what forever meant. 10 years later, Seoul once again shimmered under a pink sky. Cherry blossoms fell like snow, painting the streets in shades of love and memory. Felicity walked through Uedo Park with her daughter, now 8 years old, holding her hand and twirling in delight beneath the trees. Her laughter echoed like music. Appa said he'll meet us here, the little girl chirped. Felicity smiled softly. Your father is always full of surprises. She didn't know how true that was, not until she reached the small clearing where the petals danced in the wind and saw him waiting. Jinwoo stood there, older but even more handsome, wearing a soft gray suit and holding a bouquet of white lilies. Behind him, the path was lined with lanterns and flower petals, leading to a small archway draped in pink blossoms. Their daughter gasped, Amma, it looks like a fairy tale. Felicity's eyes filled with tears. What is this, Jinwoo? She whispered, her voice trembling. He smiled, his gaze tender. 10 years ago, you said yes to me under the lanterns. Today, I just want to ask again. Will you still walk beside me, through every season, every sunrise? Her heart fluttered just as it had the first time. "Always," she whispered. He took her hand, slipping a delicate new ring onto her finger. 2 intertwined gold bands, symbolizing 2 souls forever bound. Their daughter giggled and clapped her hands. "Kiss her, Appa." Jinwoo chuckled softly, then leaned forward and kissed Felicity. Slow, deep, full of the same devotion that had carried them through every storm and every joy. Around them, cherry blossoms swirled like blessings. Later that evening, the 3 of them sat on a blanket beneath the blossoms. The city lights glimmered across the river, the same way they had when their story began. Felicity rested her head on Jinwoo's shoulder, their daughter asleep between them. "Do you ever think," she whispered, "about how far we've come?" He nodded, his eyes on the stars. "Every day, you turned a man who only knew business into someone who understands life." She smiled, tracing his jaw with her fingertips. "And you taught me that love doesn't need to come from where we expect it. It just needs to be real." He turned to her, his voice quiet and full. "You're still my beginning, Felicity. My peace. My always." She kissed him softly, the petals falling around them like tiny blessings. And as the wind whispered through the cherry trees, their love, once forbidden, once tested, stood unshakable. Not perfect but true. Not fleeting but endless. 2 hearts. 2 worlds. One forever. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment. Also like, share and subscribe to my channel and click on the notification icon so that you will get notified whenever a new story is uploaded.